I'm 19, and honestly, I thought my life was finally getting back on track after a really rough year. I had just started my second semester of college, was finally getting out of the depression pit I fell into after my mom passed, and even started talking to a girl I used to know from high school. Well, more than talking. We hooked up a couple times over the summer. I wasn't proud of it at first. It felt impulsive, sloppy, like two people clinging to each other because we were both lonely. Her name was Kayla. We weren't dating, just whatever that weird in-between thing is. We'd text, flirt, sleep together occasionally. She said she didn't want anything serious, and at the time, I didn't either. So when she ghosted me around late August, I wasn't heartbroken, just confused. One day we were binge-watching true crime on my couch. The next, she blocked me on everything. Not even a single explanation. I figured maybe she got spooked or met someone else. I moved on, or at least tried to. Then a few weeks ago, my dad dropped a bomb on me. He called to say he'd gotten remarried, which was weird, because he never mentioned dating anyone. After my mom died, he kind of checked out emotionally. For months, he was like a ghost, barely spoke unless it was about bills or logistics. We coexisted more than we lived together. Eventually, I moved into student housing, and we sort of drifted. So, yeah, hearing that he married someone, without ever saying he was seeing anyone, that was a shock. He invited me over for dinner to meet his new wife. I said yes, of course. I wasn't going to miss the chance to see what kind of woman could actually break through his cold shell. I didn't expect to walk through the front door and see Kayla standing in my kitchen, wearing my mom's apron and smiling like she hadn't disappeared from my life 3 months early. Dad? He introduced her like it was nothing. This is Kayla, your new stepmom. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, frozen. My brain was scrambling, trying to process what I was seeing. It was like my entire body short-circuited. My ex-situationship, who ghosted me without a word, was now wearing an engagement ring, standing next to my dad, holding a bowl of mashed potatoes like we were about to have a wholesome Sunday dinner. She looked at me like we were strangers. No emotion, no awkward smile, not even a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Just a polite, empty expression, like I was the neighbor's kid coming over for a barbecue. My dad clearly had no idea. He had that proud, clueless grin dads get when they're trying too hard to seem cool around their kids. He kept going on about how they met at some business event a few months ago. Apparently, Kayla was helping coordinate some charity dinner, and they hit it off. I couldn't even respond. I think I mumbled something about being happy for him and sat down at the table in a daze. The whole meal was a blur. I barely touched my thoughts were ping-ponging between horror, confusion, and something way deeper, disgust. Because even if Kayla didn't know my dad and I were related back when we were hooking up, she knew now, and she was still standing there like it was fine. At one point, she reached across the table to pass my dad the salt, and I caught a glimpse of the bracelet it was the same one I gave her during meetups. Fancy. Just a braided lead with a silver clasp. I remember joking that it made her look like someone's hot older cousin. She said guess she wasn't lying. I couldn't take it. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and just stood there breathing hard, staring at the like I was trying to wake myself up from a fever dream. My stomach was churning. My hands were shaking. She knew. She knew who I was. She knew what we did. She knew exactly what kind of mess she walked into, and she married my dad anyway. And the worst part? That wasn't even the biggest twist. The biggest twist came later, when I decided to confront her. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Kayla, digging through old messages, photos, anything that could explain what the hell was going on. I wanted to believe it was just some insane coincidence, that maybe she didn't know I was his son when they met, that maybe she'd met him after she ghosted me and just never connected the dots. But there were too many holes in that story. For one, my dad and I share the same last name, an unusual one, not Smith or Johnson or anything forgettable. It's the kind of name people pause on when they hear it. There's no way she didn't recognize it. Second, she'd been to my house before. Not inside, but she'd picked me up once, back when we were sneaking around and didn't want my roommates to know. She saw the front of the house. She commented on how classic it looked, with the stone porch and red shutters. Guess who's living in that house now? Yeah, I knew I couldn't let it slide. I needed to confront her face to face, but I didn't want to do it with my dad in the room. So I texted her. Yeah, I know, probably stupid, but I needed answers, and I didn't trust myself to hold it together if I showed up unannounced. To my surprise, she responded almost immediately, said she'd been expecting told me to meet her the next day, alone. We met at this quiet coffee shop just outside of town. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, iced drink in hand, sunglasses on, acting like this was just a casual meetup between friends, like I wasn't about to ask her why she'd married my dad after sleeping with me. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there and asked her the only thing I really needed to know. Did you know who I was when you ghosted me? She didn't answer right away, just stared into her drink like it might magically dissolve the guilt sitting on her. Finally, she nodded, and that's when the floor dropped out. Not only did she know who I was, she had known the entire time. She knew I was his son before she ever even messaged me, because Kayla wasn't just some random girl I used to hook up with. She was my half-sister. Let that sink in. She knew, and she still married my father. I felt like my brain broke. I just stood there, frozen again. Same way I did when I saw her in my dad's kitchen, only this time there was no, just cold, hard reality settling a block of ice. She didn't apologize. She just sat there, calm, and said it like, yes, she knew. Apparently, she'd found out from one of those late-night confessions after too many glasses of wine. Her mom told her that her real dad was someone. Eric is my dad's name. At first, Kayla didn't believe it. She thought it was just a dramatic story her mom made to mess with her, but curiosity got, and she started digging. Found him on Facebook, saw the family photos. Me, my mom, my dad, saw my last name. Then she found me. I had a small social media account I barely used, but apparently I posted just enough. She realized we lived in the same university, same gym even. So she, she said she wanted to see what I was like. I could feel my heart beating. I asked her the obvious, why would you sleep with? She didn't give a real answer, just stared at me and said she didn't plan for it to happen. But once it did, she felt connected and didn't want to stop. She called it curiosity, said it felt like testing a missing part of herself, like I was some experiment. My mouth went dry, I could barely breathe. She claimed she ghosted me to end it before it got worse. But when my dad showed up at that charity event a few months later, she saw it as fate. Said maybe this was her way to finally have the father-daughter relationship she never had. A relationship she clearly had no problem sleeping around the edges of. I felt sick. I told her she needed to tell my dad. Immediately, she shook her head and said no. Said it would destroy him. That he finally seemed happy for the first time in years. That he didn't need to know. And then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and told me something that still makes my skin crawl. You weren't supposed to find out. She was trying to keep me quiet, trying to protect her secret. She didn't care what it did to me, but I cared what it would do to him. I walked out of that coffee shop and threw up in the parking lot. I don't know what messed up game she's playing, but I know this. I can't keep this secret, not from him. But how do you even begin to tell your father that the woman he married is both your ex and his daughter? I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I drove around for hours. No music, no phone calls, just silence and headlights, and my brain spiraling in every direction. Every time I thought about telling my dad, my stomach would twist. It felt impossible. Like no matter how I said it, I'd be the one destroying his life. But the longer I stayed silent, the more twisted it felt. The idea of him waking up every morning next to her, talking about building a future, maybe even having kids, it made me physically nauseous. He didn't know he'd married his own daughter. He didn't know the woman he trusted was lying to his face every single day. And somehow, I was the only one carrying that truth. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to sit on it. He deserved to know. I just didn't realize how fast things were already unraveling behind the scenes. When I finally pulled into my dad's driveway, I noticed something was off right away. The front door was cracked open. Not wide, but just enough to notice. Lights were still on inside. Even though it was already past 6 a.m., I stepped inside and immediately felt it. The tension, like the air itself was holding its breath. And then I heard his voice. Not angry, not confused. Broken. He was sitting at the kitchen table, slouched forward, one hand covering his face, the other holding a folder, papers spilling out across the wood grain, and Kayla? Nowhere in sight. I asked him what was going on, but he just stared at me. His eyes were red, puffy, like he hadn't slept all night. He didn't ask why I'd come over, didn't even seem surprised. Instead, he said the 4 words that dropped me into a new kind of hell. I got a letter. It was anonymous, typed, mailed to his office the day before. No name, no return address, but inside? The connection between him and Kayla, the matching birth record, the overlap in timelines, the photo of her mom, the same woman he dated in college before meeting my mom, and worst of all, a screenshot of me and Kayla together, one of our selfies from that summer, smiling, tangled in each other's arms, and just like that, my secret wasn't a secret. Someone out there knew. Someone else knew, and they were done. I don't know what I expected, and he handed me the letter, the anger, accusations, a total meltdown, but he just looked tired, like something inside him had finally snapped in silence. He slid the envelope across the table. I saw the printed address, the generic white paper, the lack of handwriting, cold, deliberate. Inside was everything Kayla had told me, only worse. Detailed timeline, birth certificates, ancestry report, my selfie with her, printed in color. Whoever sent it knew everything, and they wanted it to blow up. There was a short note typed at the bottom of the last page. You deserve to know the truth. She's lying to both of you. That's it. No name, no clue where it came from. Just a digital grenade, and they pulled the pin for us. My dad looked up at me and asked the one thing I didn't want to hear. Is it true? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My face did it for me. His eyes closed. His jaw clenched. For a few seconds I thought he was going to lose it. But instead he let out this broken little laugh. Not amused. Empty. The kind of laugh people let out when the floor drops out from under them. Then he said something I'll never forget. I married my daughter, and my son slept with her. The room went dead silent. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't look at him. Every inch of my skin was on fire. I tried to speak, to apologize, to explain, but there was nothing I could say that wouldn't make it worse, because the truth was bad enough. There was no fixing it. Then he asked the next question, who else knows? And that's when everything cracked, because I hadn't told a soul, not a single friend, not even a therapist. The only person who could have sent that letter with that level of detail was Kayla, or so I thought. But my dad shook his head, slowly, and said, it wasn't her, because she got a letter too, delivered to the house. Same day, different contents. Hers had a paternity test, one she didn't take. Someone had gone behind her back, submitted DNA samples, hers and my dad's, and got the proof. Positive, 99.8% match. So whoever this was, they didn't just know the truth, they confirmed it, and then mailed the fallout straight to both of us. The question wasn't if our lives were about to explode. The question was, who lit the fuse? My dad and I sat in that suffocating silence for what felt like hours. Neither of us touched the letters again. Just sat there. Two broken people surrounded by proof that everything we thought we knew about our family, our past, our relationships, it was all a lie. And then he said something that chilled me. I think I know who sent it. At first, I assumed he meant some friend of Kayla's. Or maybe her mom finally decided to come clean and couldn't face it directly. But no, he didn't say it with anger. He said it with shame. He stood up slowly, walked to the cabinet under the sink, and pulled out a small plastic box I hadn't seen in years. The kind of container people use to store old tax files or forgotten photo albums. He placed it on the table, opened it, and pulled out a stack of letters. Old, yellowing, unopened, dozens of them, all with the same return address. My mom's handwriting. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. He didn't look at me when he said it, just stared at the box like it might swallow him whole. She knew. She always knew, but she never told me. I couldn't speak. I could barely think. He said that during one of their worst fights, years ago, before I was even born, he had confessed to cheating. Just once. Said it was a drunken mistake at a college reunion. Swore it meant nothing. He didn't remember the girl's name. Didn't even remember what she looked like. My mom forgave him, or at least she said she did. But what she never told him was that the girl had written to her, years later, saying she'd had a child, saying the timelines matched, saying she thought it might be his. My mom never responded, never mentioned it again. She buried the letters, literally and emotional. But here's the thing, she didn't destroy them. She kept them, and when she passed, someone must have found them, someone who knew exactly what they were looking at. That's when it hit me. There was only one person who had access to my mom's things after she died. One person who'd insisted on helping us clean out her room, sort through her boxes, handle the estate paper. My cousin, my mom's sister's daughter, Sophie. Sophie. If you'd asked me a week ago, I would have called her the most loyal person in my life. She was the one who stayed with us the night my mom died. The one who held my dad while he sobbed in a way I'd never seen before. The one who told me over and over that we'd be okay, that we just had to take it day by day, and I believed her. After the funeral, when we were drowning in paperwork and silence, Sophie took charge, helped sort through boxes, cleaned out my mom's closet, filed insurance documents, claimed she was just trying to take the pressure off. I remember thinking, thank God for her. But now I see it differently. She was always in the house when no one else was, always offering to take, and more than that, she was close to my mom. Close enough that if my mom had ever hinted it casually, she would have picked up. The moment my dad said her name, something clicked that made my skin crawl. About a month ago, just before he told me he got remarried, Sophie and I had coffee. I remember it vividly now. I barely registered it then. She'd asked if I was seeing any. I said no. She smirked, said something, not repeating past mistake. I thought she my last break. I laughed it off. Now I wonder if that was her subtle way of checking, of seeing if Kayla and I were still a thing, because she knew everything. And I'm almost certain she sent those letters. But it wasn't just about blowing up. No, Sophie doesn't do pet. She does purposeful. She wanted this to come out. But not for us, for herself, because Sophie's family, the side we share, is tied to my dad's business. They've been trying to push him into retirement for years, but he's refused to let go of control. If the public ever found out that he married his own daughter, that would be the end of him. His name, his legacy, his career, wiped out in one scandal. And guess who stands to gain everything once he's forced to step down? Sophie's mom, my aunt. It's all starting to come together. But the worst part? Sophie didn't just destroy my dad. She used me to do it. She knew I'd slept with Kayla. She knew I'd be the final thread holding the bomb together. All she had to do was wait until the pressure was high enough, and then pull. I didn't tell my dad right away. He was already unraveling, pacing the house in that half-shattered, half-numb state like he didn't know where to go or who he even was anymore. Every so often, he'd pause, like he was trying to remember how his life got to this point, like he couldn't recognize the house he built, the marriage he was in, or even the sun standing in front of him. So I made a choice. I went to Sophie first. I told her we needed to talk. Alone. She agreed instantly, like she'd been waiting for it. We met at this little park we used to hang out at as kids. I thought the setting might calm me down, but the second I saw her sitting there, all I could feel was rage barely held together by skin. She smiled when she saw me. Smiled, like we were catching up over coffee. I sat across from her, didn't even say hello. I just asked if she sent the letters, and just like that, the smile disappeared. Not because she was afraid, but because the mask finally dropped. She didn't deny it, didn't play dumb, didn't even look surprised. She just nodded. He deserved to know. I asked her why. Why now? Why that way? Why blow everything up instead of just telling the truth privately? She stared at me like I was the one being naive. You think he would have believed it coming from or you or her? It had to be She went on to say it wasn't about revenge. It was about setting things right. She talked about how our family has always buried its secrets, how my mom lived with the truth for decades, let herself rot in silence while my dad moved through life This was a rot that needed to be cut out, she said. Then she told me something that made my skin crawl. She hadn't just found the letters. She'd done DNA testing. On all of us. Quietly. Without permission. Over months. She'd stolen a toothbrush from Kayla when she stayed over during one of the early visits. Dug through trash for one of my dad's old razors. Used hair strands from my mom's old hairbrush to compare mine to Kayla's. She didn't just stumble onto this. She built it. I asked her if this was about the business, about pushing my dad out so her mom could take over, and that's when she laughed, a sharp, bitter, humorless laugh. You think this is about money? I'm trying to stop a bloodline from collapsing in on itself. She said if we'd kept this secret, if Kayla and my dad had stayed married, if I'd said nothing, it would have spread. Lies breed lies. Corruption breeds more. She called herself the cleanup crew. I sat there stunned, because the worst part was, she didn't sound crazy. She sounded convinced, but she never once acknowledged what it did to me, how it felt to be used, to be part of a scandal I didn't even understand until it was too late. I stood up to leave, but she said one more thing as I turned away. Don't hate me for exposing the wound. Hate the one who made the cut. And now? Now I have to decide whether to tell my dad the whole truth about her, because if I do, it'll burn every last bridge we have left. I didn't sleep again. There's this specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of rest. It comes from having too much truth inside you and no idea where to put it. I kept thinking about what Sophie said, about cutting out rot, about truth and legacies and bloodlines. But no matter how she tried to justify it, the fact remained. She'd taken control of our story without asking. She lit a match and dropped it, and now she was standing back watching the house burn like it was a public service. But the choice still sat with me. Do I protect what's left of my dad's sanity? Or do I tell him the whole truth, that the last person he trusted is the one who broke everything open? I decided he deserved the full picture. He'd been lied to long enough. By my mom, by Kayla, by himself. He needed to know what was real, even if it crushed him. When I told him it was Sophie, he didn't react the way I expected. No shouting, no throwing things, no threats. He just nodded once, slowly, like he already knew, deep down. Like it had been eating at him too, and hearing it aloud finally made the nausea make sense. He didn't ask for details. He just said one thing. I guess it ends with me then. That was his way of saying he was done with the marriage, with Kayla, with the image of the man he thought he was. He filed for an annulment the next day, quietly. No public fallout, no press, no lawyers with megaphones. He paid Kayla to leave, a lot, and in return, she signed a confidentiality agreement thicker than a phone book. She didn't fight it. She disappeared. As for Sophie, he cut her off completely. Didn't yell, didn't explain, just deleted her from his life like she was never there. I haven't heard from her since. And me? I moved out of state a few weeks later. Needed distance, space, time. I changed my number, deleted old messages, blocked Kayla before the temptation to scroll through her profile ever surfaced. Sometimes I still wonder what she's doing, but I never wonder who she really is. That part I know too well. My dad and I still talk, but it's not the same. It's polite, careful, like two people speaking through a thick glass wall. We don't bring it up. We don't ask about each other's relationships. We just exist, parallel, but we survived, barely. There are no lessons to take from this. No clever bow to tie on top. Just wreckage, quiet, slow, and still smoldering. People always talk about finding out family secrets like it's some dramatic, cinematic moment. But the truth? Sometimes it feels like you're walking barefoot across broken glass, and the more you learn, the deeper it cuts. I'll never fully heal from what happened. Neither will he. But at least we're no longer bleeding for someone else's lie.